Well, this one was hot off the press, and I just, as soon as I saw it, I said, We've absolutely got to play this one." So we'll start with that. Let me get my audio figured out here.
Good morning, Grant. Good morning, Rusty. Good morning, everyone. What a weekend. Let's hear it.
Now, I know you have been a leader in willing to embrace crypto. You have made it so that people can be in Bitcoin. We hear that you are thinking about Ethereum. These are incredible things. How now? BlackRock is not known as a gunslinger by any means. So you obviously must believe that this maybe is an alternative. Is this an alternative in order to be able, because of a deficit, maybe something long term people should have?
Absolutely. As you know, I was a skeptic.
Yes.
I was a proud skeptic. And I studied it, learned about it, and I came away saying, okay, my opinion 5 years ago was wrong. Here's my opinion today. This is what I believe in today. I believe the opportunity today. I believe Bitcoin is legitimate. I'm not trying to say there's not misuses like everything else, but it is a legitimate financial instrument that allows you to have maybe uncorrelated, non-correlated type of returns. I believe it is an instrument that you invest in when you're more frightened, though. It is an instrument when you believe that countries are debasing their currency, debasing their currency by excess deficits, and some countries are. I believe we have countries where you're frightened of your everyday existence, and if you have an opportunity to invest in something that is outside your country's control, then you can have more financial control. And so I'm a major believer that there is a role for Bitcoin in portfolios. I believe you're going to see that as one of the asset classes that we all look at. I look at it as digital gold, as I said before, and I do believe there's a real need for everyone to look at it as one alternative to, I would say, the optimism that I have in the world. If you want to hedge hope, Bitcoin is not an instrument for hope unless you're hopeful you're going to make a lot of money on it. But I look at it as a vehicle in which you're expressing your financial acumen in something that you're more frightened of the world, you're more frightened of your existence. And I believe there's a great industrial use for it. And I think a lot of people are missing that.
I couldn't agree more. I changed my mind about it when you did. You had been my thinking. It was like, you don't believe in it, so I can't believe it. I want to thank Larry Fink for the message of optimism.
Thanks.
And also for a great quarter. Larry Fink is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of BlackRock. I think the most important investment company in the world. Thanks.
Well, there we have it.
Do you think he was talking about that's debasing?
You broke up there a little bit. What'd you say, Grant?
I said, what country do you think is debasing the currency?
All of them. But led by the creators of $34 trillion of debt here at these United States, and our dollar that we've plastered the world's walls with as wallpaper. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I put a link up earlier of. Did I send you a link of our broad base monetary base? Because even with all this hand wringing about the interest rate at the Federal Reserve, we're not seeing the monetary base dipping hardly at all. So a lot more dollars out there, and we might hear some politicos talk about that's not the case. Where there are some politicos who will remain nameless talking about bringing inflation down. It's not going to happen. We may see the rate of inflation level off, but we're not going to see a drop of prices because there's too many dollars that exist in the world today. So it's where Bitcoin is most powerful in giving us an alternative, an ability to see how the pile of money that we all stand on can pass dollars around on has gotten so much larger. Larry Fink, by the way, did mention Chia a couple of months back. So
The thing about this particular clip and this being said is where he says, I was a skeptic, I was not a believer, and I am convinced, like the turnaround by these guys and by a lot of people who were doubtful of how this might work. And I think we did cover this pretty well, that like proof of work really is the thing that divides, Bitcoin from everything else. We watched the Jack Mallers clip from when they were at the recent Bitcoin conference. So I'm not surprised to start seeing a lot of people turn around on this. For anybody that isn't really paying attention, BlackRock is putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They are buying Bitcoin. So,
well, I don't. He notably he calls it a financial instrument, and pay attention to that. He doesn't call it money. He calls it a financial instrument. And so he sees it as an island of stability, like a pile of gold, where he can move dollars in while to capitalize on the time of release, the value of that dollar, into some other denomination that is not being with which the supply is fixed. To me, proof of work is very important with the Bitcoin, but I think the fixed supply is what BlackRock is much more interested in.
I think it's a progression. First thing, when you hear about Bitcoin, you don't give it much credence. You sort of dismiss it, and then you view it this way. There's actually kind of a neat chart that shows the progression of thinking about Bitcoin. And so Larry Fink and Jim Cramer, who are both talking about this in the clip, have turned the first corner. But as you continue to learn about Bitcoin and what it really means, and where the thought pattern process goes, they're only on the first step, and that's why he's thinking about it like that. He's thinking about it as a way to hedge against fiat. When you start to think that there is no fiat, right? Like this is going to go away, then it becomes the thing, and that turns your thinking in a different direction. So I think what we're going to see is that Larry Fink is going to continue to get educated, and as he goes through the progression of his understanding of where this can go, I think he's going to think about it differently. That's my prediction.
I would guess you're probably right, and maybe we see BlackRock issuing something like a stable coin or their own digital currency. But the world has come a very long way in accepting digital money since the inception of the Bitcoin. So I think that was something that which is also interesting, because those people who have adopted Bitcoin early or been attuned to the idea of it for a while seem now to be thinking in terms of their bags, of their history, of their relationship to the Bitcoin, and seem to be anti, especially CBDCs. We hear anti-CBDC rhetoric all the time in the crypto sphere. But what we're going to see now, I think, is an explosion of more digital currencies, maybe more private digital currencies like XRP, which I don't know if you paid attention, but I saw that XRP was pumping. I don't know what for. I don't really follow XRP that much, but it has been instrumental in leading the fight against bureaucratic control of cryptocurrencies here in the United States. What do you have here?
Well, this was just like the other thing. So as we covered all last week, Germany was selling off all its Bitcoin. They're officially out. When that, I don't know, whatever sentiment or sell pressure went away, there's other interesting situations that have continued to develop where there's been these long short positions, and there's a lot of theories that are still getting thrown around that like half of what's going on with the price action is that we will move down and sort of, kill all of this bets against Bitcoin, and then we'll move up and we'll kill all these other bets against Bitcoin. And so one thing to just keep an eye on is as these things continue to develop, right? And there was this $360 million of Bitcoin shorts that all are getting liquidated at this price. And so we're now well above this price, and sort of have ripped above what was the low off of last week when Germany was dumping most of what they had. And so now that's gone, and we saw this happen. Obviously, the other thing that we wanted to talk about here, which was the assassination attempt, and I was actually watching, the X live when that was happening, and it's just like it's the only news platform. Honestly, my take on this is, if you would have been looking at the mainstream media, you would not really have had a sense of what was going on unless you were watching the stream live. But as I was watching it live, like, it was very clear that there was a shooter, that things were happening, that there was an assassination attempt that was ongoing, that had been averted. But, like, as you watched the headlines flow through on other places other than X, it just I immediately was sending this off to people that I knew. It's like, X is the only news platform. It's the only thing that exists. But related to that was, there was an immediate spike in the price of Bitcoin as soon as it was shown that Trump had not been killed. And I think there was also a rip in his re-election bet. So there's a way to bet on the election, and that price just like went sky high immediately. So it's like, as soon as this assassination attempt was thwarted or was not successful, both BTC and the bet on the election just immediately swung in Trump's favor. And I also saw that a lot of the calls for Biden to drop out of the race are essentially over at this point, because the Democrats are essentially conceding defeat with the Pulitzer Prize winning picture that was taken of Trump's reaction to almost getting killed was to defy and sort of raise his fist in the air.
AOC is not conceding defeat. It's interesting that you bring up the correlation with the Bitcoin price and the spikes with the Trump assassination attempt. It is. I think we will continue to see it to be an island of stability that people look to. We've seen El Salvador use it to try to get off the dollar. There's also, I don't know if you were following the massive protests that are going on in Kenya with regards to the IMF. I saw another, I believe it was Greece, was also having political instability with regards to the deal for a loan from the IMF. Maybe it wasn't Greece. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, the world is looking to get off of the inflationary dollar, and here in the United States, that was a pretty scary weekend. There's a whole lot that went on there that has caused me to lose sleep in the last several days, not least the narrative that was carried by, that was a beautiful picture, by the way. The framing, unbelievable.
Yeah, that one, and obvious. Oh, this thing doesn't let me look at threads. It's so irritating. This post, actually, I was had a good summary of everything that came up. It was surprising how many of the things that this guy picked that I also had on my little short list of stuff that I had grabbed. But yeah, that picture really stood out to me, and I think there was like one other one that everybody's sort of looking at as one of the main the main photos that sort of came out of this thing to help people understand really what was happening in the entire event here. Let me grab it quick.
I also found out about the attempt on X, and I immediately called some friends who were Republicans who were watching it on various other forums, including Fox, and they had no idea. There was just like a mild disturbance going on at a Trump rally, and I've been amazed that. I guess one of the most shocking things is the lack of coverage on other platforms. Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook didn't cover it the same way either. It really didn't. Like I
buried it.
Yep.
Absolutely buried it. YouTube has buried it. TikTok has buried it.
It was shocking. It was shocking. Like, and the other thing that I found very interesting too was that there were reports that people saw the gunman on the roof, right? And there has been a lot of calls like of, well, is the Secret Service really doing its job? What's really going on here? How could this have been allowed to happen? And the fact that minutes in advance, law enforcement was being warned that there was somebody in a place with a weapon that shouldn't have been there, and was clearly going to do something. And it got me thinking, what's the right response these days? Calling law enforcement or calling in whatever's happening, is it likely to yield the thing you want? But like, think about going on X immediately and just live streaming it. So like, there's gunmen right here. Like, what would happen? Like, if that's what would have happened instead, they just jump on a live stream and be like, we're just filming this. Here's this guy right here. He's about to off the president. That can happen. I mean, that will happen next time. I guarantee it.
Well, I also thought in the wake of the Supreme Court decision with regards to the presidential immunity of the executive, there are rules of engagement. There are rules against shooting citizens. This did not take place in Washington, D.C., which is notably not a state, because there were to be different rules. Now, I told you I was reading a history of the Kiowas, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs wanted Chief of the Kiowas, Satanta, released by Texas, but Texas wouldn't release him. There used to be a greater understanding that the states made rules concerning the bodies that the states owned, the bodies of the citizens of the several states. But I thought in the wake of this, perhaps we need to have some sort of an understanding with the executive and with people who are running for that office, that there should be a perimeter of a suspension of habeas corpus around them, so that and when I say that, a lot of people aren't aware that on the southern border of the United States, within 100 miles, habeas corpus has been suspended, and the federal government gets access to people's bodies within 100 miles of the southern border. And that was ostensibly done so that they could search people who were coming across, and also take control of immigration. That hasn't really turned out so well. You see Texas moving against that. But long story short, it would seem to me that I saw this video almost immediately. Impressive that we get this sort of information about what was happening, along with the other videos that people took of the shooter crawling around on top of the video, almost immediately after, within 30-40 minutes after the shooting.
Right. And I remember when the Ukraine war was first breaking, and it broke on X in a way where there were people that just called into a space and said, okay, I'm in a bunker and bombs are falling, and they were live streaming events. And it happened in a space that was completely unrelated. It's just like, all of a sudden, hey, there's this big thing that's suddenly occurring. The speed with which, information can propagate through X these days it's crazy. It's really, really interesting, because it feels like one of the only places to get really unfettered news, and the ability to just dump video into a place and then have people see it almost immediately. It's so new. It's so different. It's so weird.
Well, it was also the reason that Jack Dorsey and a couple of his other friends who were in either Portland or Seattle and they wanted the world to be able to communicate quickly and without the mediation of media. Ha ha ha. Um, uh, and what was one of the first things that happened on the heels of the creation of Twitter? We saw the Arab Spring, and the ability for Egyptians and Tunisians to pass around information with regards to their protests was crucial for those political movements. I'm not sure how much United States interference went on with regards to propelling those on, or also using the technology like they did in the Maidan revolution in Ukraine. But it's incredibly powerful. Shortly after this video came out, I also saw a post. I don't know if you have seen it, that purports to be one of the shooters, who said that they had a bead on the the snipers that are part of the Secret Service, that they had a bead on the shooter for 3 minutes, and were told repeatedly to stand down, and that they could not take a shot until the shooter took a shot.
I saw that. That was something that was posted to 4chan anonymously, I think, and the Secret Service person said their name. I think that looked like
Jonathan Willis, with an A, Jonathan Willis, Willis, is the name that was given in that 4chan post. I'm not sure if that post is true, although I do think that I did look specifically for information regarding the rules of engagement with regards to the Secret Service, and I saw not from the Secret Service page or anything, but from other. It may have been Dan Bongino, who had also a great summation and some prescient words to say about this, that the Secret Service is not supposed to shoot until a shot has been fired. And that's where I thought we should be thinking about, if you want to go to a political rally, there should be a notion of the suspension of habeas corpus to give the Secret Service access to the bodies of those people who attend. And I know in America, where we talk about sovereignty and liberty and freedom, that may not be everyone's cup of tea, cup of coffee. But I think it's going to be necessary for the protection of politicians.
Well, so the behavior of the Secret Service here and the weaponization of the Secret Service is something that's being discussed, right? So we have a political candidate, Kennedy, who has repeatedly been denied Secret Service protection despite being, a prominent candidate running for U.S. president. Then you have this situation developing where it looks like, either the Secret Service has completely failed in their duty to secure the area. I mean, if you look at the overhead map of this rally, it's like one of the only spots that you could really set up on. I mean, it's like, honestly, it's like, why wasn't the Secret Service just deployed on that? Like, why are they pointed in that direction? Like, why aren't they just over there? Like, really? We have a manpower situation where you couldn't have taken up a position on both of those?
Well, I don't know if you saw, but Jill Biden had a rally in, I believe, Pittsburgh, and usually the Trump security team included 3 sniper teams of 2, and instead of having those 3 teams, they were down to 1. And not only that, but the agents that were guarding Trump were sourced from the Department of Homeland Security, filling in for the agents that were pulled from Trump to secure Jill Biden. And with that too, I was astounded, because while I understand providing security for the for the relatives, for the spouse of the president or the executive, I think that Trump had a greater claim uh, to a higher priority resources. He is a former president himself and a candidate for president, and we know we love the spouses of our politicians, but it's not the same. And had there, I mean, that to me was one of the jaw-dropping revelations with regards to this fiasco. I
Well,
could not believe that
but
resources were diverted.
but just to stay on this point for a second, right? It's like, here's the rally, right? Here's where the counter sniper teams are. But like, seriously, look, look at this. This is the only place you could possibly set up, right there. I mean, the rest of this is just like an open field. I mean, maybe these trees or something. I don't know.
I mean, they could have at least had a policeman or a sheriff's deputy on that roof over there to.
You guys didn't see the report that there was a policeman that climbed up the ladder and then turned around and walked back down after the gunman pointing the rifle at him?
I heard that.
Yeah, I heard that too. I was also, and possibly that did something in rushing the shooter.
And it doesn't really surprise me that the Secret Service wasn't allowed to shoot before the shooter fired first. When we were in Iraq, that was the same rules of engagement that was allowed over there. When we were going through the Iraqi confrontation, they had all those people going through the streets with weapons. You couldn't do anything to anybody that had a weapon until they actually took that weapon and made a forceful gesture and fired at somebody in your unit. Like, there was people that were just allowed to walk freely with weapons until they made that action, and then that you were allowed to interact with them and fight back. But you were not allowed to engage them first at any point with any of those people that had weapons in any of those crowds.
That's rules of engagement, right? That's you're talking about for like when you're fighting in a war.
That was the rules of engagement for the Iraqi war. That's what they were told. They're going through. They have all these people in the crowds that have weapons. They're allowed to have the weapons. It's until they point the weapon at somebody and make the gesture that they're going to be, acting like they're in a killing manner. Then you can take something to react to that action. But until that action is made, you can't really do anything. And they're allowed to fire it in the air. They're allowed to shoot it around anywhere. And it was really crazy on what was the point of line in which you're allowed to make that judgment call.
There's a difference in the rules for soldiers. There's a difference in the rules for policemen, and there's a difference in the rules for sheriffs and deputies. And I think that if the Secret Service is going to be working with local law enforcement, then they should have the ability to deputize those whether police officers or other sheriff's departments or whatever law enforcement they're working with, deputize them to act, because if you're a soldier, you have to follow orders. If you are a policeman, you have to follow orders. Deputies and sheriffs do not have to follow orders. They get to make a determination in their mind as to what course of action that they're going to take.
So here's something backing up what you're talking about, Rusty. I think this may have even been the post that you read, but I tried finding it and I couldn't find the exact written down rules. So I don't know what a source within the Secret Service community is referencing here, if there's some kind of written document that says here's what's going on. But at least this individual, Susan Crabtree, is saying that you have to be actively being fired upon before you can do anything about it.
That is not protection. That is reaction. That is not protection. So I saw
it's protection for the gunman.
Well, but the thing that I'm saying, I want to go back to this just for a second, right? So sure, you could say that's the rule of engagement, but there's nothing stopping the Secret Service from taking up a position over here. I mean, if they wanted to, they could have taken positions all over the place. You know, it's just a manpower thing, right? And like, what other details do they have? You know, it's like, what's the more important one? Like, we have the top contender, like the only one who was allowed on the debate stage, you know, against Biden, former president. Like, what are we doing here? And like, the only thing you have to do is like, there's only one other spot that you could conceivably even need to take a position on. And they could have been there well before the rally, like hours ahead of time. They could have made those guys sit up there for half a day, you know, if they want to.
Well, that would have been the best plan, but within, you know, like starting at the 3 minutes in which there's a person on that roof, that person should have been eliminated by the snipers immediately. And Rusty, when you say that the rules of engagement is protection for the snipers, this is why we need to change the rules of engagement and give them the ability to both make a decision, immunity for the decision that they make, and the control over the bodies that are within a perimeter of the candidate or the president.
And I agree with that, Lucas. I think that's a logical take on the situation. It's unfortunate that is not how it is, and we are very lucky that it was a Democrat or the person shooting the weapon was not very knowledgeable on what he was doing. You could take a look at the shots that were fired. I think he fired at least 7 shots. The majority of them went into the podium itself. I do feel very unfortunate for the person that lost their life and the people, innocent victims that were hit through the aftermath of the firing. But the actual damage to Trump was very low.
Well, thankfully, and he got off an unbelievable number of shots, because like this notion of the rules of engagement that they have to wait until the shooter fires. I mean, are we living in 1880? We have weapons that can take many shots in the time that it takes to register what has happened and to respond to that. So I hope that we see Congress assemble, call this into an inquiry. I know that Tim Burchett was screaming for it on television, or an interview I saw with him. They're supposed to wait 72 hours after an incident, I guess. I don't know why they would do such a thing. It would seem to me that they could call an emergency session immediately and change this. We do have the Republican National Convention starting today. Did you guys see that they're going to maintain the ability of the attendees at the Republican National Convention to carry weapons into the convention? Mind-blowing.
Wait, what? You got a link on that? Where did you
I'll
read that?
I'll go find one. That's what I saw reported. I thought that they would.
Oh, okay. Let's circle onto that one, but just real quick, since we said we were going to talk about it, so this one will be fast while you're looking that up. So we'll just mention this briefly. If I could actually get my windows rearranged so I can get this up. Half of this is having to manage trying to get the right information into the stream at the right point. Okay, I think I got it. There we go. So according to this account and Fox News, apparently Trump is planning to announce his VP pick today. So have guns at the convention and a VP pick announcement. I noticed that there was also a lot of call for a unity ticket. I don't know how much credence I really give that to say.
Zero.
Yeah.
That's when you say unity ticket, you're talking about Bobby Kennedy.
Yes.
Becoming the VP. No, that's not going to happen. And that's not a unity ticket. That also like totally misses the point. And this is something that I'm not hearing Joe Biden, Trump, or anyone else talking about. Like, there was a time whenever political discourse was with regards to policy issues. And we have stumbled into a time where ad hominem attacks on various politicians, and all of the political discourse seems to be about the cult of personality of a particular politician. And I think Bobby Kennedy understands this, and will not be like this notion of a unity party, or him dropping out of the campaign to accept a position in Trump's cabinet. No, he has very different policy goals than Trump or Biden, whose policies are similarly aligned, sadly. And Bobby Kennedy understands that if he wants to make the case for changing Americans' minds with regards to some of his policy issues, like fighting large corporations, that that he needs to continue the campaign and continue talking about seeing the world in the way that he does, even if idiots in journalism want to call that lies.
I that 100% resonates. As I started to see the reactions of people posting stuff, just like community videos and stuff being posted on X, which shows the sentiment of like how are people reacting to this failed assassination attempt. Overwhelmingly, you didn't see a highlighting of Trump policy. It was more like, okay, if they decided to take this guy out, then I'm going to support him now. It wasn't like a big turn towards policy. It wasn't like a wake up of what it is that Trump wants to do within his presidency. It is absolutely resonant with what you just said, where this is just more establishing the cult of personality here. It was a turning towards Trump as a figure, but not as a vehicle for policy or what's actually going to happen as a result of the Trump administration, where I think Kennedy has laid out very clearly what he intends to do with his administration. There's definitely been talk about what Trump plans to do in the context of his administration, but it wasn't like a result that we turned and started saying, okay, well, if this guy is going to get elected, like what's actually going to happen? It was more just like, okay, he got shot at, so now I'm going to support him. That it's a weird reaction, because when you're electing a president, you're definitely going to get whatever they intend to do, not just him as a person.
And there's been all of these politicians who talk about dialing back or toning down the rhetoric. If the rhetoric continues to be about your opponent rather than what your policy agendas are, or what like your values are, then there's no toning down the rhetoric. Like you can say, you can use any sort of words. You don't have to use 4-letter words. You don't have to call people names. You can do it jokingly. You can do it with a purple angry face. But if you're talking about the opposition rather than what you're there for, then you've lost in politics. And if we, the voters in our democratic in our democratic republic, fall prey to this charade of choice, then we've also lost we've lost our political system, and our, I don't know, living in days of our lives. I don't know. This is I have been I don't know, just dismayed with the campaign this year. The constant, when Trump came on the scene, I thought, well, here we have somebody who doesn't care about the personal attacks and will be immune to attacks about his business, his life. Somebody who will remind us that none of this matters, because whenever we have political candidates, it needs to be about the issues. And maybe we are actually getting there, going back to the Supreme Court decision with regards to presidential immunity. That doesn't mean that the president gets to kill anybody that they want. What the Supreme Court is hollering for is this needs to be about political issues and concentrating those on a person. But whenever we open them up to, by the way, I don't know if you saw that that the case against Trump was dismissed.
I saw that. We're talking about the classified documents. case?
Yes, the classified documents case. But there are still many more, and we need to get away from this notion that a judge or a lawyer, a prosecutor somewhere is going to further our political agenda, because that is also caustic. You know, I mentioned AOC has not tucked her tail and bought into this notion of giving up with pushing back against Trump or his policies. She always impresses me. She's a very smart, savvy. Yeah, look, Thomas Massey back too.
I know.
So,
I had to grab Thomas Massey's coverage of it since we talked about Thomas Massey. Who knows? Maybe we get him on the show soon. But yeah, there it is. Right. That's covering it.
I mean, I'll swoon if we get Thomas Massey on the show. I'm sassy for Massey. But I'm sassy for AOC too, and not because I agree with her, but because, you know, I told you that my initial reaction when I saw that she wanted to impeach Alito and Clarence Thomas after some of the decisions that the Supreme Court came out with, I was I was like, what? That there's no precedent for that. But sure enough, there is. We have impeached Supreme Court judges before, and I think some of her, Anna Paulina Luna also, some very smart political players who are reaching out of the traditional bag of tricks. And we certainly have impeached Supreme Court justices in the past. And not only that, but there was a time early in the very early years of the Supreme Court where the notion may have been that we were going to have federal juries rather than justices acting as appellate judges for decisions. So it would be very interesting if we returned to the use of a jury at the federal level too, to get us away from this capture.
Now, an impeachment of a Supreme Court justice. This is a Senate 2/3 majority vote, I imagine.
Oh yeah. Well, they would have to be impeached, and then that would be voted on to be removed by the Senate, impeached by the House, and you know, it was also interesting at the time.
The Senate confirms the Supreme Court justices, and then they can only be removed by the Senate as well, right?
Well, it's more that the impeachment process is one that puts forth charges with regards to a bureaucrat or unelected, a person who is elected, and then the Senate gets to review those charges and vote on the validity of them. So, and yeah, that has to be by 2/3. But I would much prefer impeaching justices and returning to federal juries than stacking the court with more and more judges. That's a different problem to come to. I mean,
so as a consequence of this election, are we going to have a couple more justices cycle out? I think that's on the radar, right? Is that it's likely that the next president gets to put at least one more Supreme Court justice in place?
I don't know. Like the ideology of those justices, and listen to this conversation that we have over here in America and how much rides on it. I mean, is this how we intended the union of states to work? I don't think so. But
I don't think so. But it happens to be the reality.
Well, and if Trump is elected, then I would imagine that he maybe replaces some judges who are, you know, part of his conservative ideology. But again, like you've asked me about the left, the quote unquote left and right wing of the court, and I don't think it exists. If we were to have any criteria for the Supreme Court justices, I wish that we would focus on where they're from and where they went to law school, because what we've seen is a capture of legal thought according to a couple of institutions, Yale and Harvard. and that is one particular region of the country, one specific location. If we were to have emergent political order, as was originally envisioned by many, not all, then we would have seen I would hope that we would have thought it would come from a different, whatever, the Harvard Divinity School, but that got me worked up. I don't. Anything else that you wanted to add to I don't know, our parsing of the assassination attempt and everything riding on the back of that?
Yeah, I was just looking it up. I'm not sure that there is going to be any replacement. I don't. Who's the oldest? Clarence Thomas, maybe.
Well, Clarence Thomas has been on the court for many years.
Right, I'm saying like he's the only one that I could even anticipate. Like if the rest of the court is not that, it's not really that old. So I don't think so. Actually, there may not be any change in the composition of this the Supreme Court in quite some time.
Maybe not. I would wonder if some justices who served for quite some time might see it as a chance to have a president who is partial to their way of seeing the world fill their seat, to give them a break, because
all right, well, let's just look at the members quick. I'm just running through them.
Okay, go for it. John Roberts,
not a chance he's leaving. Clarence Thomas is getting old, and there's a lot of heat on him. I could imagine him quietly retiring, given the fact that he's starting to take a lot of flack for some things that he's done that are mildly questionable, or maybe very questionable. I don't know. This is partially what I think AOC is upset about. Alito, not a chance. Sotomayor, not a chance she's leaving. Kagan, not a chance she's leaving. Gorsuch, not a chance he's leaving. Kavanaugh and Barrett were just put on. I don't see any of these people leaving. No way.
There's something else that I'm always tracking whenever it comes to Supreme Court justices, and that is, what is their religion? And I say that because I talk about the adversarial notion of justice as opposed to an inquisitorial notion of justice. And part of the reason that you see a lot of Catholic and Jewish lawyers, judges, and justices is because they practice religions that obey law. And part of the problem you come to when you come to new notions of political order with Protestantism, like if every citizen gets to read what is written and decide, going back to Lollard notion, John Wycliffe's translation of the Bible, and putting a Bible in every person's hand so they could read the moral code and understand those rules, rather than go to an assembly somewhere and listen to a priest tell them what was important at the time. Those are very different. Those are very different, notions of order. Gorsuch is also very interesting. He, I believe, is Episcopalian. He might be Episcopalian, because Episcopalian comes from the Church of England, and the Church of England is not necessarily Protestant. It is a copy of the Catholic Church, because Henry VIII wanted to get his hands on those Catholic lands. So, anywho, I'm always interested in, where did the candidate grow up, and what religion did they practice, or do they practice, and then third, where did they go to law school? So those are the things, and I don't necessarily want or care to see someone who agrees with me. I grew up in the middle of flyover country too, so never going to find a justice who came from where I'm from. But I think having a mixture of them is the best representation of the United States. Yeah, let's talk about something else. Yellen.
Well, let's turn to our last topic here. So I think the last thing we're talking about is just dollar dominance, right? So I think we got two things that we wanted to discuss with respect to this. So you mentioned this one that Yellen said there's some concerns here with what might happen if sanctions are imposed. Also with Trump talking about using Bitcoin the way that he's talking about using it. And then Saudi Arabia. So yeah, let's spend the last 10 minutes kind of just talking about this stuff.
Well, we talked a little bit about the hearing that, or I don't know what we call it, that Yellen appeared before the House for an address or to answer questions from various members last week. I believe it was over 2 days. I only caught the first day, but apparently at some point, and remember my takeaway from watching that first day was that I was appalled at the number of representatives who wanted to take their 5 minutes to tell Janet Yellen that it was very important that we sanction China or sanction any number of other countries for not doing what we want them to do, which doesn't seem to me to honor their sovereignty in any way. And not only that is caustic to the notion that we are providing a service with regards to a stable currency for the rest of the world to be engaging in commerce through. And apparently Yellen at some point mentioned that. God bless her. Because if we continue to use sanctions throughout the world, they don't work, especially not with other options now, like the Bitcoin. And this probably has this probably has also bearing, maybe not necessarily Yellen's remarks, but the use of sanctions, pushing other countries like Russia and China and Saudi Arabia to be doing deals together. Not only that, but also the South America has been unifying to open up avenues of trade between the different countries that do not rely on the United States dollar. We also saw reports of which I had missed, but apparently several months ago, whenever the United States was talking about seizing assets of Russia and Ukraine, Saudi Arabia said that they are going to dump all of the United States treasuries that they own and the European treasuries that they own if the United States did that.
Well, and that's a good segue to this chart. We went looking to see, well, how much does that matter? Okay, they're pretty low on the list. I mean, it's like they don't even show up in, like, what is this, the top 10? So, top 5 is here. This is the report of the various holdings of Japan and China. It's mostly Japan and China, and shockingly, the UK has been loading up on U.S. debt. Apparently, that's not something I expected to see. So, does it? I mean, how much do they really have? Like, I'm not sure that this would do much.
Well, we never really get around to the curious relationship. I mean, the United States has two very special relationships with other countries in the world. One is the United Kingdom, and the other is Japan. And if you think back to if you think back to before the United States relied on China for cheap goods, or for other countries in Asia and South America for textiles, et cetera, we had or even, I mean, think of South Korea and both cars and electronics that we get there. There was one that led them all, and that was Japan. And coming out,
I remember that. It was the 80s. It was like the U.S. was very afraid of the the tech sector getting just dumped on by Japanese electronics and chips and what have you, because it used to be that that was where the fight was over who made the electronic goods.
Well, and people used to talk about the organizational practices as Japan as being so avant-garde, and I was like, no, that's where we're funneling money, and having a cheaper hourly rate and cheaper resources for the creation of goods that we're going to consume here in the United States. Over in our private chat, I also put a link of we talked earlier, and Janet Yellen also in her speech last week talked about special drawing rights with regards to the IMF and the World Bank. And if you pull that up, you will, there's a chart in there of the holdings by various countries. Or maybe I gave you the wrong link. Sorry about that. The special drawing rights of that are held by the various countries in the World Bank. I believe Japan is second after the United States, which is again part of our control of those institutions, having the Japan and the UK act as our proxies. I wish I could have found a better. I'll see if I can find a chart with the SDRs held by the various countries. Anything else before we close it up?
Nope. I think this is our topic for today. I think it's very interesting to see the coverage of the assassination attempt and X as the news platform of delivery. That was kind of my takeaway. I've been gravitating towards Twitter and X as my platform ever since it became fairly obvious that Facebook was not covering things well, and so I'm curious to see the continued dissection of what really happened over the last few days and what's going to happen as more rallies continue to move forward. With Trump just immediately going golfing, I don't see him stopping, so we'll have to see how things shake out, but some are saying that the election pretty much ended yesterday, as long as everybody that said they're going to vote for Trump votes for Trump. So we'll have to see who he picks for VP later today, and I'm sure we'll cover that a bit tomorrow.
Well, before then, I'm curious as to what your thoughts are with regards to maybe who you would like to see as the VP, who you wouldn't like to see as the VP. I saw that Nikki Haley is now speaking at the Republican National Convention, and I thought, if Nikki Haley is the choice for vice president, I will. I'll have to grab a piece of paper and fan myself. I'm not going to be excited about that. I don't know that there's any.
The only one that I saw that seems like it might align politically is Vivek. I wouldn't be surprised at that pick at all.
Yeah, I've thought that it would be Vivek for some time. I've heard talk about Glenn Youngkin. God forbid, Nikki Haley. Vivek, I think where Trump is probably most interested is Vivek would be a staunch defender of one, sees the world very much as I believe Trump sees the world, but also would be a very staunch defender of his policy decisions in his first presidency with regards to the COVID response. And is also, I would imagine that he would never get along with Bobby Kennedy. And yeah.
I think Vivek just aligns on a lot of policy positions, on crypto, on a lot of stuff. I think they see eye to eye. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was Vivek at all.
Well, and I can't seem to find a current chart of the holdings of SDR allocations. I'll have one prepared for some time in the future because it is a very interesting chart. But yeah, Japan has an enormously outsized influence with regards to population and landmass with regards to the rest of the world, and so does the UK. The UK, by the way, increased its population by 600,000 people this very last year.
That was mostly on immigration, though, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
600,000 people in a country of 60 million. You know, that's what the size of Illinois and Ohio, with population size. So unbelievable. I don't even know what the numbers are for the United States. So anyway, that drags up a whole new bevy of conversations, policy talks, and we're on the end of the hour. Enjoyed it today, Grant, Rusty, and I will see y'all tomorrow.
See ya.